What's going on, everybody? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a comparison between the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 and the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G. Now, before we go any further, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot. And if you want to learn more about either of these phones, be sure to check out my full reviews and tips and tricks videos for them as well. But with that being said, let's get started. So the Moto G Stylus 2022 has a 6.8-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 396, an aspect ratio of 20.5:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of around 84.6%. We got a hole punch up here for the front-facing camera, right in the middle, looks real nice and clean. And this camera is 16 megapixels. Now, the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G has a 6.5-inch TFT display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 270, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of around 81.6%. So the bezels are definitely a little bit thicker on this phone. We got a water drop notch up here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 13 megapixels. Overall, both of these phones do have nice displays with nice vibrant colors and good brightness as well. The images are sharp with both of them, but you can definitely tell the 1080p display of the Moto G Stylus 2022 definitely looks a little bit better, a lot sharper and more crisp in general. Whereas with the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G, it doesn't look bad per se, but you can definitely tell it's a 720p display. In addition to this, the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 is clearly much larger than the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G, and this is going to make a difference when it comes to content consumption. Everything is going to show up larger and look better on the Moto G Stylus 2022 overall, and we're also getting a taller form factor with this phone, so when you're streaming videos in landscape mode, it's going to look a little nicer, and if you're reading something, you'll be able to fit more on the screen without scrolling. So in general, while both of these phones have nice displays for what they are, I would say the Moto G Stylus 2022 has a huge advantage if you're going to be consuming a lot of content. Now, for storage, both of these phones have 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion. Although keep in mind, with the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G, there are some variants that only have 64, but this specific phone in the video does have 128. Now, with that being said, having this kind of internal storage is definitely a nice thing because although both of these phones also have microSD card expansion if you need it, I personally prefer to have more storage on the phone itself. Now, there's no wireless charging with either of these phones, but we do have fingerprint scanners actually in the exact same spot right here on the power keys. And this is really convenient because with these phones, you'll probably be touching this button anyway to wake up the display. So you might as well just be able to unlock it at the same time. So starting with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we're going to test out these fingerprint scanners and see how well they work. There we go, one more time. And there we go. Real fast and responsive, no issues here. Moving on to the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, both of them are real fast and responsive, no real issues. Although I guess it is worth pointing out that the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G isn't quite as responsive when the screen is actually off, whereas with the Moto G Stylus 2022, it really didn't make a difference. Now, taking a look at the rear camera setup here, the Moto G Stylus 2022 has a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera that also doubles as a macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. With the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G, we got a quad camera setup here with a 48 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera, a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. In addition to this, for video, the Moto G Stylus 2022 caps out at 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, which is kind of a disappointment because the Moto G Stylus 2021 that came out last year was able to shoot in 4K, but they did take that feature away with this model. On the other hand, the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G can shoot in 4K in the rear camera and 1080p in the front. So overall, I do think both of these phones have really nice camera setups. Not only do they have pretty much all the features of a mid-range phone, but they also take really high quality photos with sharp details and really vibrant colors. So if you're going to be taking lots of nice photos that you're going to keep for something, then either of these phones will be a great option. I honestly don't think the difference in camera quality between the two is really enough to justify making a decision based on that. But I will say, if video is more important to you, then the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G is going to have an advantage here because again, it can shoot in 4K in the rear camera, and the Moto G Stylus 2022 can't shoot in 4K at all. Now internally, the Moto G Stylus 2022 is getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio G88 processor. The Samsung Galaxy A32 5G is also getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 720 5G processor. Now it's also worth pointing out that the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G, as the name implies, is a 5G phone, whereas the Moto G Stylus 2022 does not have 5G connectivity. Now, don't get this confused with the Moto G Stylus 5G. I know there are a lot of them, but the Moto G Stylus 5G is a completely different phone. Now, I do think there's probably going to be a new Moto G Stylus 5G as well coming out sometime in the future, but I don't know that for sure. So again, just keep in mind, the Moto G Stylus 2022, the newest current version of this phone, does not have 5G. Whereas, of course, the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G does. Now, I ran Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on both of these phones, and the Moto G Stylus 2022 came back with a single-core score of 368 and a multi-core score of 1304. The Samsung Galaxy A32 5G came back with a single-core score of 504 and a multi-core score of 1670. So there's clearly a pretty big difference here. The Samsung Galaxy A32 5G, both based on the score and in practice, is much faster than the Moto G Stylus 2022. So if you're planning on doing any higher end activities like gaming or maybe some video editing, something like that, then the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G is of course going to have a huge advantage here. Now, I haven't had any performance issues with either of these phones, so both of them are going to be perfectly fine for normal activities, like browsing the web and some light social media use, stuff like that. But if you're going to be on your phone a lot, again, I would say, the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G is probably going to give you a better experience. Now, both of these phones also have 5,000 mAh batteries, with the Moto G Stylus 2022 supporting 10-watt fast charging, and the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G supporting 15. Now, I seriously doubt this difference is even going to be noticeable, because I can tell you from experience, both of these phones charge up really fast as it is. Now, this goes for both of these phones. Having such a large battery is going to be a great thing for both battery life throughout the day and longevity down the road, because depending on how you use these phones, they're most likely going to last for multiple days on one charge. Now, down the road, as the battery degrades, which all batteries do, with these batteries, it's not really going to affect you nearly as quickly as it would with a smaller battery, because you're already starting out with so much more battery life than you need. So if battery life and longevity is one of your top priorities, either of these phones will be a great option. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 does not have NFC, and the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G does. This is a little disappointing on the Moto G Stylus's part, because pretty much every phone in this price range that's come out so far in 2022 does have NFC, and Motorola still hasn't put it in their phones. So that's really too bad, because NFC is necessary for contactless mobile payment services like Google Pay, and those are becoming more and more popular and widely used as time goes on. So I would think that in 2022, every mid-range phone would have it, especially since lots of entry-level phones are starting to get it too. But unfortunately, in the case of the Moto G Stylus 2022, that hasn't happened yet. But we are getting NFC with at least this version of the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G. Now, there's an annoyingly high number of variants for this specific phone, so depending on the one you end up looking at, that one may or may not have it, so definitely be sure to double check. But this specific phone in this video does have NFC. So if those services like Google Pay are something that you really want to use, definitely keep this in mind. But now that we've gone over some of the specs of these phones, let's take a closer look at the devices themselves. On the left side for both of these phones, we got the slots for the SIM card and the micro SD card. On the bottom here, we got the 3.5mm headphone jacks, the microphones, USB-C ports, speakers, and for the Moto G Stylus 2022, of course, we got the stylus right here, the thing this phone is actually named after. Now, is it really a game changer? I really don't think so. You could honestly use this phone and forget that it even has a stylus and be perfectly fine. But if you want to do something like draw a random little handwritten note or something like that, you can do that just fine. But if you're planning on doing any sort of graphic design type thing, you're probably going to be disappointed, because this is no S22 Ultra. It's not going to be that sensitive. So just be aware that unless you really like to use the stylus to navigate through the device, it's really going to be more of a novelty than anything. Now, on the right side here, we got the power keys that again double as the fingerprint scanners. Volume down, volume up. On the top of the phones, we got the noise canceling microphones. And on the backs here, we got the camera setups and the flash and their respective branding. Now the Moto G Stylus 2022 has this really nice metallic finish and it doesn't show fingerprints too badly. Despite being a really large phone, it's also not too bulky, so it's not going to be uncomfortable to hold or carry. The Samsung Galaxy A32 5G, on the other hand, has more of a glossy finish that still doesn't show too many fingerprints that badly, but you can definitely see them in the right lighting. Now this phone, once again, is really not very bulky, but this phone is also not very big in general, at least compared to the Moto G Stylus 2022. So if you don't like big phones, I know there are lots of people out there who don't, then this one might be a better choice. Now, as far as the overall build quality goes, I'm definitely giving it to the Moto G Stylus 2022. This phone feels a lot more solid, has a little bit more weight to it, and overall the materials feel a bit more premium. Whereas with the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G, it's still plenty sturdy and it doesn't feel bad per se. But compared to the Moto G Stylus, the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G just feels a lot more like cheap plastic. But in conclusion, which of these devices is better? I would say that in general, the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 is going to have most of the advantages here. The display is much better in pretty much every way. It's a lot larger and higher quality. You get a taller form factor. And in general, if you're streaming lots of videos, viewing photos, reading, playing games, pretty much anything, you're going to get a much better experience with this phone. In addition to this, the Moto G Stylus 2022 has better build quality. It definitely feels a little bit heavier and just sturdier overall when you're holding it. And that's really going to make a huge difference. But on the other hand, the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G does have a much faster processor. You can shoot 4K videos with this phone, and it has NFC as well. So if those features are more important to you, then the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G might be a better choice for you. Now once again, if you want to learn more about either of these phones, be sure to check out my full reviews and tips and tricks videos for them on the channel. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. But as always, I will see you in the next video.